welcome to You're Still Doing That, where we talk with everyday people about their childhood joys that have endured into their adulthood. Joining me today is...
Hey, I am Karen Huey, and I was an educator in the Lee County Schools for 37 years before I retired in 2013. It's hard to believe I've been retired for 10 years, but I've been very busy during that time.
What was your childhood passion that you still do today?
I loved music, and I still do that today.
All right, let's hear your story. Welcome, everyone, to You're Still Doing That, where everyday people can talk about the things they did as kids that they still do today, and tens of people will probably listen. Sitting with me today is a Lee County legend, Karen Huey. She has been guiding the minds and hands of Lee County strings players for decades. She has taught scores of violin, viola, cello, bass students, and chorus students in the Lee County school system and private lessons. Hey, Karen.
Hello, how are you doing?
Oh, I'm great. When did you first get excited about music?
I was probably in the fourth grade.
And where were you living in the fourth grade?
I was living in a very small town in Massachusetts.
Oh, my wife's going to love that because she's from Massachusetts. What was the name of your town? She might know.
Shrewsbury, Massachusetts.
Now, was that anywhere near Waltham?
It was about 40 miles to the west, I think.
Oh, that's Shrewsbury. I love that name. What got you interested in fourth grade?
I spent some time with my grandparents, and they loved watching the Lawrence Welk show.
Oh, yes, I know Lawrence Welk.
So I watched a lot of Lawrence Welk, and I became really infatuated with some of the players there. That lady that played the cello with that beautiful smile, and it just made me love music.
I love it. Karen, what was your first instrument?
Violin was my first instrument.
Now, did you do, like, at my elementary school, a lot of them, we do recorders and some xylophone instruments. Did you do any of that in school?
This was back in the 60s.
Right?
I don't think we had any of that.
Recorders weren't around yet.
I'm sure they were, but I don't think they had made it into the schools.
Now, did you start violin in school, or was it through private lessons?
It was through school. Some lady came through and played for us like we do for students nowadays. And I thought, this is the closest to Lawrence Welk I'm going to get. So let me sign up.
I love it. Who was your first teacher?
Her name was Delia Rhodes, and she came from around Boston, and she traveled an hour to get to us.
Wow. Now, was she like just a private instructor, or was she a teacher through the school system that came?
I think she was employed by the school system. We didn't really think about that too much back then. We just thought, these are the days she's coming.
Right.
And so there were very few of us that signed up. But interestingly enough, I'm still friends with a couple of the guys that were in my class in fourth grade through Facebook.
Yeah. That's awesome. Now, when you started in fourth grade, now when you got to middle school and high school, did you have ensembles to play in?
Yes, we did. And we even had a small ensemble that played in the fourth grade, fifth grade for concerts for PTO or PTA as it was called back then. And we played in school mainly, but we had some nighttime concerts. And when I was in fifth grade, they divided the town into two groups, and one group went to a very old school that was built in the 1700s.
That is an old school.
Yes, late 1700s, but it was a 6-room, big old schoolhouse, and the way New England towns were formed were was there was a church, a school, and the fire department all around the town commons.
Yeah.
And so we had a 6-room schoolhouse and no cafeteria. We had to bring our lunches from home, and we got to buy milk from a cooler in one of those cardboard containers. And take it and eat it in our seats in our room. We had calisthenics on the town common, led by the principal, when the weather was not nasty. And we got to see the fire trucks run out whenever there was a fire.
Yeah. That's amazing. That's interesting how things differ and change throughout the years. Especially the principal leading lead everybody.
We didn't have a PE teacher. It was only the principal when the weather was good enough.
When the weather was good. What a shame it was when that 4th and 5th grade strings program when I came to Lee County, we had one.
Yes.
And as teachers left and went on to different places, they didn't get replaced.
Yeah. Well, we were told, because we had 400 kids in strings in little old Lee County.
Yeah, you guys,
from 4th grade through 12th grade, we had 5 string teachers. Yeah. And we were told we were an interruption in the school day because at one of the schools, the 5th grade teacher said, all of you go and I'll go too. And so all of the students in her class came except for one kid. So the teacher could not come. She had to stay with that one student because it was part of a pull-out program. Yeah. So the teacher signed up for private lessons and played with the kids on their concerts.
Oh, that's epic.
But since we were involving so many kids and so many kids were missing certain subjects while they came to strings.
Parts of the school day.
Although they were the academic students who could afford to miss those things. Sure. But it was frustrating for the classroom teachers. And so they aged us out as the 4th graders became 5th graders. They did not allow us to replace them with new 4th graders, etc.
Yes. That is awful. I mean, the benefits of learning the instrument and learning a whole another language, and then those skills and concepts translate academically.
Yes.
It's just awful.
Yeah, it was very frustrating. It was very sad because then we were down to starting in middle school. And for a lot of people, that's too late.
Yeah. Well, they got other interests, and it's definitely too late. You lose kids. Yeah.
But you have to be flexible and go with the flow. That was what the flow was going to be. So we made the best of lemonade.
Yeah. And then slowly but surely that got faded away in the middle schools too. They took away as teachers left, they made the other teachers take on more responsibilities.
Yep.
So they had less ensembles and still, less responsibilities. That's awful. The studies behind music education and how it affects someone's academic performance. I mean, it's just the data just tells you right there that one enhances the other. Awful. Well, hopefully some of that will change. We're trying something, but we'll see if it gets approval. So
yes,
we'll see. All right, Karen. What was the size of your ensembles, like in middle school and high school? What was the size of your orchestra groups?
Well, they were probably bigger than they were. They are nowadays, just because there's so many more things put on the students that they have to have. For example, when the school system decided to go to the 4x4 program with scheduling at the high school level, we were told this would be a good thing for the arts because they could take more classes. Yeah. So there were 32 potential classes the kids could take. And at that time, there were only like 24 required classes. So that left options for 8 electives.
Yeah.
Now, so there were some kids that could take band or orchestra or chorus all year, every year. But that became fewer and fewer as more classes were loaded onto their schedules.
Yeah.
And U.S. history changed back and forth, and I don't even know where it is now, if it's 1 semester or 2 semesters for the 11th graders. But often it was 2 semesters, and I found it sort of weird that world history, the history of the world from the beginning until the present, was 1 semester, but U.S. history had to be 2 semesters for 400 years.
That's right. So we're more important.
Yeah.
Now, what about your ensemble sizes when you were in middle school and high school?
We had solid sizes. I was in a period of time where there was tremendous growth in my school up in Massachusetts. And right at the end of 7th grade, I moved to Charlotte, North Carolina. Total different life.
I would think so.
When I was in Massachusetts, our activities during the summer were, I lived on a gravel road, and it was to get a box of 64 Crayola crayons and color all the rocks on the road.
Nice.
Starting with the rocks in front of my house. We didn't get very far on that, but that was what we did for excitement. When we moved to Charlotte, there was a nice string program in the middle school where I went to school. It was junior high at the time. And they were experiencing a lot of growth. The neighborhoods were increasing. Kids were coming in playing these instruments from all sorts of places. Yeah. And we had enough people in our orchestra to have our own orchestra intramural volleyball team, softball team, and basketball team.
Wow.
And so we were like a family, and there probably were 15 of us. And we had gym on A day and orchestra on B day. And so we had to keep up with whether it was a gym uniform day or a musical instrument day. And boy, if you couldn't keep up with that, you were pretty sorry because you couldn't wear your violin and you couldn't play violin with your gym suit.
Yeah. What was the brand of your violin? Do you remember?
Well, in Massachusetts, I remember we did not have a music store. Right. So we had to go to the next town, the next big city, which was Worcester. Yep. And every 3 months, my rent on my violin was $5 for 3 months.
Wow.
And that was big things back in the 60s, early 60s. And so it was a big thing. Dad would put me in the car. We'd go, and I would get to hand the $5 bill to the store people, and that let us be good for the next 3 months. So I think I had a Roth violin, which is a pretty good name instrument. I think when we moved to North Carolina, I had already been gifted with a very, very nice violin, a handmade violin. There was a violin maker in the next town where we paid our rent, and I was taking private lessons at the time, and he knew my private teacher. He was dying of cancer, wanted to find homes for all of his good violins. So I just knew at the 7th grade Christmas that I was going to get a violin. Yeah. And we went through Christmas morning. No violin appeared under the Christmas tree. I was just devastated. Then I had a thought, is there anything behind the sofa? And there it was. And so Dad had paid $100 on the advice of my private violin teacher to get this violin. And it's a very nice instrument, handmade. It's over 100 years old. Yeah. It's celebrated its 100th birthday in a locker at ASU Music Building while I was at music camp working there. And then I bought one to take to school every day and leave the good one at home.
Yeah.
Because, you didn't want to be transporting a nice instrument.
Right. Exactly. I always told a lot of my kids too that if we had one at school, I'd be like, just play the school one while you're here and keep your home one at home.
Yes.
And they'll bring it back and forth. Did your middle school or high school groups, did you guys get to travel to perform any?
Oh, yes. Well, when we were in the middle school group, we had enough people. We had all those intramural teams, and most of the kids took privately. And when we got to the high school that year, it was like 2 middle schools or junior highs converging into one high school. And by the time we were in the 10th grade, there were 105 people in our orchestra.
Wow.
And it was a pretty good orchestra.
Yeah.
We had a string teacher and a brass teacher who both taught collaboratively in that venture, and we'd have sectionals. Yes, we got to travel a whole lot. We got to go and participate in all-state orchestras all over the state, contest festivals. Our directors were very interested in giving us good opportunities. On my birthday, on my 16th birthday, Aaron Copeland came to Charlotte.
Oh my God!
And directed our orchestra.
Oh my God!
Yes, he was 76 years old, and he walked out onto stage just such a feeble man.
Yeah.
And he was stooped all over towards the front, and we thought, oh, this is going to be slower than we had practiced it.
Yes.
We were playing rodeo, and oh my gosh, no, he got on the podium, sort of cranked up his back, stood up tall, and let us go. And oh my gosh, we played, and we earned enough money and the right to go to Midwest Band and Orchestra Clinic and perform in 1971. In December, we chartered a Eastern Airlines 727 jet.
You guys did earn some money.
Well, at that time, the jet was $5,280 to have a jet all to ourselves.
Yep.
We chartered it both ways. We spent 6 days and 5 nights in Chicago, doing all sorts of wonderful things. I remember waking up one day and they said, do not go outside if you don't have to go outside today. There will be no school at so-and-so school and so-and-so school. The roofs blew off the school.
Oh,
you know, Chicago is known as the Windy City.
Yeah.
So we spent the day at Marshall and Fields, the 8th floors of Marshall and Fields. But we did wonderful things. We flew the conductor, Vaclav Nellybell, into Chicago, and he directed us on a piece. He wrote a piece for us. We had the orchestra director from Wake Forest come and direct us at that concert also. And so we had tons of opportunities. In high school, there was a string quartet in our group that got to play for a Macintosh sound system demonstration. So we sat there and we played Fioco's Allegro in a quartet version, and then the people with the sound system said, now, wasn't that great? Let's hear it again. So we would mime it, and halfway down through the piece, we put our instruments down, and the sound was still going, demonstrating how true to reality the sound was. And we got paid $30 each for doing it 3 times. Our first paying gig. We got to play in banks uptown in Charlotte. We played for President Nixon when he came to Charlotte.
There you go.
When we were in high school, lots and lots of opportunities.
All the great things you get to do in a bigger city.
Yes, we had many opportunities.
Yeah. Wow, Aaron Copeland.
Yes.
That's amazing. Yeah, talk about a legend right there, an American legend. All right. So, Karen, where did you go to college at?
I went to Appalachian.
Yeah, Appalachian.
Wonderful school.
What was your major at Appalachian?
Music ed with a concentration on violin.
Did you have to audition in
Yes.
those days? Yes.
Yes, we had to audition, and during that time, they were pretty generous with some scholarship money to entice you to come.
Yep.
And so I got some scholarship money for having a decent grade on SATs, on the English part particularly, and I had some scholarship money for playing the violin.
Yes.
And I got some work study experience also by through the music department.
Nice. Who was the violin professor at Appalachian?
Violin teacher was James Dellinger. He's still alive. He lives in Hickory, and keep up with him through Facebook.
Yeah. That's the social media is good for keeping us all together.
Yes.
What was the size of the violin studio then?
Well, it's pretty standard. There's about 15 people that make up a studio, and the professors are paid on how many contact hours they have through whether it's the private students or he was also the director of the orchestra at the time, so he got contact hours. There were 6 violin majors that came in with me, and only 3 of us left.
3 graduated at the end.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds a little typical for college.
Well, we had a music theory teacher who made it his job. He said there are far too many people that just are good at playing their instruments or wanting to be good at playing their instruments. And there are just too many of them, so it was his role to sort them out by making sure they were knowledgeable or not knowledgeable in music theory. And he's gone now from the earth, but I hear that he told a lot of people they needed to be selling shoes.
Oh, my goodness. Well, I got to tell you, when I transferred into Appalachian from Sandhills Community College, and that was not the case of the music theory teacher there, because when I transferred in, I had already taken music theory at Sandhills, and of course they weren't going to transfer community college to theory over, so I took like a little entrance test to test my knowledge of music theory, and they tested me all the way out of music theory completely, except for they called it I think maybe they called it 20th century or level 4 or modern theory or whatever, but your basic stuff I tested out of. It doesn't sound like that guy would have let me test out of his theory. I would have had to start from scratch, I think.
He was very tough.
Yeah, I think they had 4 levels of theory when I went, and I went into I started maybe level 3 or level 4. I thought that was pretty generous because I remember starting and thinking, oh man, I need to brush up. I don't remember a lot of this. Let's see. So being an Appalachian alum myself, I'm interested to know what the campus was like when you were there versus when I went in 1998. What the Hayes Music Department? What did it look like when you went?
Well, when I went, there wasn't a Hayes Music Department.
Oh, all right.
It was the music majors, it wasn't even a school of music. It was just the music majors were in I.G. Greer.
Gotcha.
And there were 7 practice rooms upstairs, 7 practice rooms downstairs, and 14 practice rooms in the new wing of it. And there was a lot of clamoring for practice rooms because we were expected to practice several hours a day.
Yes, you are.
And it was a small department. It was a friendly department. I mean, the amount of friends that I made there, besides making good music, I mean, it was a wonderful experience. Yeah. Absolutely wonderful. Now, the building is still there. It's scheduled to be torn down.
Remind me where that building is.
It was next to the old cafeteria. on the other side of campus by
yeah.
Sanford Mall.
Yeah.
And I lived in East Dorm for 2 years, which was the closest dorm to the music building.
Yeah.
The trumpet players were encouraged to warm up at 7 o'clock as soon as the building opened. And so they were singing and playing, and they had their windows open, and people who were not music majors in our dorm were not appreciative of the trumpet majors. But it was a wonderful place. It's being used now for offices, and they still use a 300-piece auditorium for lectures and movies.
I remember. I was thinking, I was like, oh, that's the place where they would show movies and have guest lectures and stuff. Yep, I remember.
Still being used for that, even though it's scheduled to be taken down.
I listened to Tibetan monk chant in that one when they came to Appalachian. We all got excited to hear them sing one person sing harmonies to themselves. Right in there. All right, so I'm interested to know if some of the things I had to go through at App, maybe you did some of the same things as well. First, let's see, what ensembles did you play in?
I was in the symphony orchestra and the string orchestra, and we were in lots of little quartets and small chamber ensembles that we got no credit for but had to do. So in all the ensembles I could
For me, they just called it was horn studio, and then you got told if you were going to be in this group or that group, but you didn't get credit for those.
Yeah.
It's interesting that your violin studio was 15 people. My horn studio was like 15 people. I would have thought there'd be more violins.
Well, no, there's a formula. I have worked the administration end of the music camp and have been privy to how all that stuff is decided. And so, like if you're a high school student and getting ready to go into being a music major somewhere, there may only be 4 openings because there's, freshmen, sophomore, juniors, and seniors. And so you're going to have perhaps 4 people per year in that studio. And every year you have to replace what graduates. So,
interesting.
It's contact hours.
Yeah. Oh, it's how many contact hours they give each student. I would have just assumed there'd be a ton of violins.
Well, no. And sometimes there's multiple teachers. There were 2 trumpet teachers. At that time, there was only 1 violin teacher because they were trying to build the studio. Nowadays, there's a violin teacher and an adjunct faculty member that also teaches violin, and the viola professor has some violin students also.
Gotcha. Let's see. So I had to learn virtually every instrument offered in the public school system, or at least take several weeks on it to get semi-proficient. Did you have to do the same thing?
Yes. As instrumental music majors, we had to learn all the instruments, at least how to make a sound, how to put them together, etc. And that's really good information. Did I ever think I was going to have to teach anything other than strings? No, I thought I was always going to be a string teacher.
Right.
Reality said you're going to have to do lots of other things.
That's exactly.
And so that came in handy. Could I teach one of those other instruments? Yeah, I could with assistance and resources that we have available. Would it be the best thing for some of the kids? I'm not sure. One year I found myself having to teach art. Now, I knew very little about art except that I appreciated art. And this was 180 days of art instruction for high school kids. And at that time, there were 35 projects that the art teachers made the kids do. I was in charge of all the fine arts people, so I knew what the art teachers did. But when I was called towards the middle of the summer and said, this is your schedule for next year, orchestra, music theory, chorus, and art. And I'm like, I'm sorry, you've got my schedule mixed up with someone else's. They said, no, art. And I just cried and cried for the rest of the summer because I knew what they had to do.
Right.
And I could not teach someone how to draw 2D drawings and 3D, three-dimensional drawings. I could not do the corner of the room, and I could not do the hall. And for the rest of the summer till school started, I practiced doing those things, and there was nothing that looked like a corner of the room or a hall. But my colleagues in the art department were so wonderful about keeping me after school every day, planning my lessons, teaching me how to do it.
Teaching you how to do it so you could teach it.
And they were just wonderful doing that.
Wow. Yeah, I had to teach remedial math one year, and I was scared. I was like, you got to be kidding me. I told my principal, I was like, I audited every math class I took in college. I had to take them twice to get through them. And he was like, well, you're just teaching the remedial kids. And I was like, oh, man, we might be on the same page. So I would learn the lesson the day before. I'd have to, because I didn't know how to do any of it. And then I would teach them the very next day, and that's how it went. I'd have to learn the math stuff because I could do it. Luckily, I wasn't state tested or anything.
I had one student who I taught violin to in elementary school, and then when she was in 9th grade, she was in my chorus. And when she was a senior, she shows up in my art class, and she said, Miss Huey, I didn't know you taught art. I said, I didn't either.
She says, you'll find out quick. I don't. That's what I told my math kids.
Yeah. It didn't hurt her, though. I mean, she still remembers art with good feelings, so that's all that matters.
What was your favorite instrument that you learned to play at Appalachian? All those other instruments we had to become semi-proficient on. What was your favorite one?
Well, there was not a lot of call for string instruments in the pep band. So I learned enough trumpet to play in a pep band for the basketball games. And they treated the pep band members to steak dinners at the Gold Room before all the basketball games. So, that was a good gravy train to get on.
That's up.
So I bought it. My sister gave me one of her trumpets, and I played the third trumpet part on the Star Spangled Banner, C, 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 B, C. I could get those notes, and so I had some fun playing the trumpet. I had originally wanted to play French horn, but I had some major bracing of teeth issues, and that was not compatible.
Braces are not French horn's best friend.
No.
I know that one myself. What was your least favorite of the instruments to play?
Probably just drums, not all percussion instruments, just drums, because it just hurt my ears.
Oh, mine was the flute. That was the only instrument they did not pass me at the end of the semester on my woodwinds proficiency, just because of the flute. We had to play, I think, a couple of scales, and then we had to do the chromatic. I don't know if it was 1 octave or 2 octaves, how far up the chromatic we had to be proficient on. No, I was not. I could not get it.
Flute is hard.
I had to. They gave me like an incomplete or something, and I had to take lessons with the flute instructor until I got that passed off, and then they changed it. Oh no, the flute, that was dreadful. I really liked the oboe. Was one I liked playing.
Oboists have the highest insanity rate
of
musicians because it puts such pressure on a certain gland.
Oh, interesting. Now, I did enjoy playing the oboe. And this is probably the fault of them. For strings, since I was a brass player and I was going to be teaching marching band, for strings proficiency, all I had to choose was high strings or low strings. I didn't have to do both. And so I did high strings, I did viola. And little did I know that viola is not in treble clef.
Right.
I had no idea when I signed up for it. it was sort of like a French horn sound. That's where I went to, and I was like, "What is that thing?"
Yeah, that can be confusing.
But I did like viola too, in there. But
my baptism by fire on the viola was I'd played violin, and then because I was a violinist, they did not do anything with viola with me, and so I did some cello stuff, and so. My senior year, I was off student teaching, but I was local to the area. They were dedicating Farthing Auditorium, which is now the Schaefer Center for Performing Arts.
I don't realize they changed the name.
Yes, someone gave more money.
Yep.
And so we were performing Brahms' German Requiem, which is a tremendously difficult but beautiful piece of music. And the violin teacher sent me a message and said, "Come on by, we need you to play on this opening of this building. I've got music for you." Well, I went by, picked up the envelope and thought, well, I'll look at it a week before the event. And I did. I opened it up and there was viola music.
Oh, no.
And I called him back and I said, "Hey, you gave me the wrong set of music. This is viola music." He said, "No, I need you to play viola." He said, "I've got enough violins. I need you to play viola." I said, "I've never played viola, and I don't have one." Yeah. He said, "I've got one here for you. Come by and get it." And so the first thing I had to play on viola was Brahms' Requiem, which is just extremely hard. So I learned baptism by fire.
Yeah, well, that says a lot about your skills to get on there. For those of you that don't know, the viola is practically the only instrument that does not follow the standard. What was the word I'm trying to look for? The standard. Most instruments all the high instruments are in a treble clef, and the bass instruments are in a bass clef, and then the viola is all by itself. And nobody knows how to read viola music. The notes are all named differently and in different spots. And it's awful if you're not a viola player.
Yes, it is.
When did you? So did you have to do jury at the end? I'm thinking I'm remembering that word correctly.
Every semester, we were in quarters the first 3 years I was there. So 3 times a year, we had juries at the end of the quarters.
Oh, wow.
And then my senior year, they went to semesters, so we only had to do it twice that year.
Now, was your jury in front of the school or just in the studio? Because mine was each semester we did a jury for the studio, and we really only played like 1 or 2 pieces for the studio.
We had to do juries in front of all the string faculty. So it was the violin teacher, viola teacher, cello teacher, and bass teacher.
It was not that serious
if there was one, and but not the students. It was just before the faculty members.
Gotcha.
But then we were also given recital responsibilities. I had a junior recital that I shared with someone, and a senior recital that I had all by my lonesome.
Yeah, I just had a senior recital all by my lonesome, and then each semester you had to perform in front of your studio.
Yeah, we did not have to do that.
But we didn't have to perform in front of faculty at the end of the semester.
Yeah, and the faculty had to all pass us off.
Oh, that was way more serious in your day than it was in mine. No, it was just your professor and then the students. So there was a lot of peer pressure playing in front of all the other kids. When did you graduate Appalachian?
I graduated from Appalachian in 1976, and
that was the year I was born.
Thanks, Matt. And was lucky enough to get a phone call to come to Sanford to interview for a job. A friend of mine and I had gone to several interviews in different cities. She was a band person looking for a band job. I was looking for a string job. We had our interview process. We would leave Charlotte at 6 in the morning, dressed in our shorts and our comfy T-shirts. We would go to the Shoney's in the town where we were going to have our interview, sneak off after eating breakfast there, one at a time to the bathroom, get in our interview duds, and find out where the interview was.
Yeah.
Well, that worked in several cities. It came time for Sanford. I asked if there was an opening for the band position, and they said, we might have one of those. Tell her to come along. We did our strategies. We left 6 o'clock in the morning. Got to Sanford. There was no Shoney's.
Nope, not yet.
And so it was like, oh my goodness, what do we do? So we found, it was before GPS. We had gotten instructions how to get to the building. Downtown, it was at the Wilrick Hotel. The school board offices were.
Yeah.
We couldn't find any place. We didn't want to deviate from the path too much because we're afraid we'd get lost. And so we wound up at Lee Drug, or Lazarus Drug, on Steel Street, which is now the Republican headquarters. And we thought we'd order breakfast. Well, they didn't have breakfast. They only had lunch, even though it was 9:30 in the morning. So we ordered grilled cheese sandwiches, and then we were going to slip off to the bathroom one at a time and change our clothes. No public bathroom.
Oh, no.
So it's 10 minutes till 10. We're parked on Wicker Street and getting ready to panic because we're still dressed in our cute little short outfits. And there was a clothing store, D.A. Kelly's or Dax, that was next door to the Wilrick Hotel. And the lady was changing the mannequins. The store wasn't even open yet. And we knocked on the window, and she let us use the dressing rooms to change in there. And so we made it to our 10 o'clock interview. And at that time, they interviewed us all day because I would sit on this little bench, and the band person would be in there for an interview. Then I would be in there, and she'd be on the bench. And then they took us to lunch. Then they took us around and showed us some of the schools. They introduced us to some of the principals and assistant principals. And so at 5 o'clock, we were finally leaving Sanford.
Wow.
And it had been a long day, a lot of information.
Much different interview process than
yes.
now.
And it turns out they bought us lunch at the Dairy Bar.
Yeah.
And I remember sitting in one of those back booths with one of the school officials eating lunch back there. And so the next day, I got a phone call, but I was at the swimming pool. When I got home, my mother said, you got a call from so-and-so at Lee County Schools. You need to call them back. And this was like 6 o'clock. Yeah. I just was devastated because I knew they don't work at 6 o'clock. Well, this person did. So I called him back, and he offered me the job.
Oh, cool.
And I said, what about the band job? Is there a band opening? And they said, well, not at this time. We don't think there is. Yeah. So I was signed on, and my friend had to find a job elsewhere, which she did. And then the next year, they said to me, you know that girl that came with you for your interviews? We got a band job now if she wants one. Oh. And so, yes, she did want one because she was a flute player teaching strings in Greenville, North Carolina.
She would want one.
Yes, 5/8 time. So, yes, she jumped on that, and she taught here for 3 years, and band and strings.
Nice. So, Lee County was your first teaching spot.
My first and only.
First and only. So, so you started Lee County Schools in 76.
Yes.
And
well, actually, it was only Sanford City Schools in 1976.
Right.
In 1977, they consolidated and became the Lee County Schools. The city and county schools went together, and East and West were born.
Right. Okay. Now, when you first started, were you at the Lee County High School property? Was that built?
My first year, I taught for Lee County City School. Sanford City Schools, sorry. Yeah. And it was Wicker.
Yeah.
In Jonesboro, and Lee Senior.
And so what strings programs did you cover then? What all did you have to do?
There had been a teacher who had been here 4 years previously and had started the string program. So my high school kids were in 9th and 10th grade. And then I taught 6th, 7th, and 8th at the middle schools.
Gotcha.
And so had a great group of kids, but I only had like 27 at the high school and maybe 7 at one of the middle schools and 10 at the other.
So did you still just do strings, or did they have you do other stuff?
I did strings, strings. Because I was traveling.
Right, that would take your time up.
I had the 3 schools. Then the next year when they consolidated, I taught at Lee Senior, East, West, Wicker, Broadway, Jonesboro, and Greenwood, and Deep River.
Wow.
I did 5 different schools a day. So I was in my car more than I was in some rooms. And that I was itinerant for many years, and not always that many schools, but quite a few schools. And then when I became unitinerant, that's when they started doing other things with me, like chorus, music theory, art. I was the student government advisor for a year.
So when did you start teaching solely at Lee County High School? When did that start?
Probably 15 years in.
Oh, wow. So you traveled for a long time.
Yes, I did.
Wow. That took a while then. When did you start doing chorus?
Dr. Bowman had been the chorus teacher, had done a wonderful job with chorus, had lots of chorus classes, lots of chorus kids. The first several years I was here, the orchestra kids accompanied the chorus kids on many things. We did Brahms' German Requiem here with my string kids playing the orchestra parts, which was not easy at all.
Yeah, I bet not.
And the chorus singing the chorus parts in German, of course.
Yeah.
And we did Carmina Burana, we did Schubert's Mass in G, we did all sorts of really good music. We were lucky enough to travel also with the chorus. We went to TV studios for Channel 2 in Greensboro and taped some things. We performed at the World's Fair in Knoxville, Tennessee with the chorus. We performed in Washington, D.C. with the chorus. We performed all over the place, and so that was a good thing. We performed tons of really good music. So there was, after Dr. Bowman went into administration, there were several other chorus teachers that came in and spent some time. And finally, there had been a string of them, and the choral enrollment had decreased because you couldn't sing in middle school here in Lee County.
And you still can't.
You had wonderful choruses in 5th grade and all the way through elementary school, and you could not sing in middle school. So trying to get some guys to sing when there was no feeder program was very hard to do. So the choral enrollment had dwindled down, and the principal at the time told me that he was going to just take that position away and use it for something else.
Oh, no.
And he was going to reassign me to include chorus since I was at the high school longer days. That's when this started. And I guess it was late 80s, early 90s, maybe. Probably early 90s. And when he told me that, I was just not prepared to teach chorus.
Right.
I mean, we had that one vocal class freshman year in college, but
that's all I took.
And I said, there's problems with this. I don't sing and I don't play the piano. And he said, I bet you sing in the shower. And I said, and the dog howls.
That's right.
And he said, we'll pay for piano players for you.
Hmm.
Famous last words.
That's right. No, I was like, oh, whatever. I'm sure they didn't do that.
Well, actually, a principal, not him, but another principal later on, there was a scheduling problem. He wanted to schedule the Honor Society induction. And he said, I'm going to have Honor Society, since I was head of fine arts. And I also operated the light board and the lights and sound in the auditorium. He felt he needed to tell me when he was going to have something. He said, I'm going to have the Honor Society induction such and such day. I said, that's not a good idea. That's the that's the Sanford Christmas Parade. And all the cheerleaders and band people and athletes would be in the parade. I said, oh, thank you for telling me that. And so then he set another date. And I said, oh, no, you can't have it that night. It's my chorus concert. He didn't think that would be a problem. So he scheduled it that night. I said, well, my accompanist for my chorus is one of my orchestra students who is in Honor Society, and her sister is being inducted. And so it is a conflict. Yeah. But it wasn't a conflict he wouldn't resolve. He said, how much is it going to cost me to get you a piano player? And I told him how much money it was, and that was the only time they ever paid for a piano player. I paid for lots of piano players. And I had lots of wonderful students and friends who were very gifted and could play. But it was a problem.
Yeah. Because I always knew you as the orchestra, as a chorus teacher and orchestra teacher, so I wasn't sure how long you were wearing both of those hats.
Yeah, and that was like teaching art. I had to teach chorus before I taught art. And it was something I went into with great fear because I didn't want to cheat any of the kids.
Yes, right.
But I learned to love it. And I had many, 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 many good years in chorus. And I hope that they loved it as much as I do.
Yeah. Well, that's good that your experience turned out positive with it. What do you think is the biggest difference between teaching chorus kids and teaching orchestra kids?
Well, orchestra kids, you have an instrument to blame things on. Chorus, when you are blaming, you can't do this, that, the other, you're blaming yourself for part of your body that you haven't learned to control correctly. Yeah. So that's different.
Did you ever, your orchestra groups, did you ever take them to critiquing or judging?
Yes, I did. I took them to Orchestra Festival for several years. And while there was some merit to that, I didn't have excellent instrumentation, right, meaning the balance of X number of instruments to X number of instruments. Right. I always did the best we could do with what we had. And at that time, lots of times the people adjudicating us would say, you need more violas. Well, yeah, I knew I needed more violas. I didn't need to pay $100 in registration fee, in paying for a bus driver, etc., to hear that. So we went several years, and then we found other things to do. We were very active in this community, playing for any and everything that needed music.
Right.
So we were locally well known, and I was known across the state because I held major leadership roles in the teaching organization across the state.
Yeah, I mean, oh my goodness, every time I talk to anybody in the state of North Carolina and I mentioned, I'm from Sanford, they're like, oh, do you know Karen Huey?
Yeah.
I was like, oh yeah, I found out extensively. Yeah, you are vastly well known in the music community throughout the state.
Infamous or famous. I was at a doctor's office in another town this past week, And as I went into the waiting area, I saw two ladies, and I thought, they're from Sanford. They have got to be from Sanford. I think I should know them. And so I checked in and sat down, and the younger of the two ladies, who was still older than I was, said, "Are you from Sanford? Do you live in Sanford?" I said, "Yes, I live in Sanford." And she looked at me real hard. She said, "Did you play for my first wedding?" And I looked at her real hard, and she had given me a name, but it wasn't her current name. It was her current name, and she was no longer married to that person. And she said, "I think you played for my first wedding." I looked at her and said, "Did you get married across the street from the dairy bar and down Carbington Road a little?" And she said, "I did."
Yeah.
And she said, "That was 1979. And then a Thursday night, I was hosting a group of the first orchestra students that started in Lee County. We try to have a yearly reunion and catch up. And one of the girls said, "Did you play for my wedding? Do you remember my wedding?" She knew I played for it. And I wasn't able to answer her because we were in other conversations. And so the next morning I texted her. I said, "Didn't you get married at your mother's house on such and such road?" And she said, "I did." And it made her feel good that I did remember.
Just the other day when my daughter Sophie has been taking cello lessons from Karen for a long time, and she's got an audition coming up, and so she told Karen, she was like, "Yeah, I have to audition, and the person at NC State, his name is something so and so." Karen says, "Oh yeah, I know him." He was like, "Oh yeah, you are quite well known." And I didn't realize another story. I didn't know how well known you were till I was at Appalachian, and we were playing in rehearsal for something or other, and somebody came up to I forget his name, who was leading us, and they whispered in his ear, and he says, it must have been something about Canon Music Camp. And he was like, "Oh yeah." And he goes, "Hey Matt, you're from Sanford, aren't you?" And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "Are you going to be seeing Karen Huey?" And I was like, "Maybe."
Now, interestingly that you brought that up, I attended Canon Music Camp in its third year of existence in 1971. I went there for the summer.
Yeah.
And in 1973, I started working there.
Wow.
And I have been working there for 50 years. And I worked there this summer. So that's how I kept touch with Appalachian. Yes. And that's how I am still known, because I work at Canon Music Camp. When I left camp to come home this year, I had my camp T-shirt on, and I stopped at Dewey's Bakery in Winston-Salem to buy some goodies. And the girl saw my shirt. She said, "Canon Music Camp? I went there in 1995. And, it's something I see people all over the country.
Yeah.
I was doing stained glass art several years ago, and I needed some stained glass, and there's a stained glass shop in Aberdeen. So I went down there, and I went into the place, and I saw this girl sitting at the desk, and I knew she had gone to Canon Music Camp.
Yeah.
And I knew her name. I was able to do all that. And then her father-in-law came into the shop. He actually owned the shop. I didn't know that. And he looked at me and he goes, "All right, you can ride the elevator up, but please take the stairs down." Because when his son was at Canon Music Camp, I was the elevator operator on moving day, and we had so many people bringing stuff in, we had to man the elevator. And We didn't want people just to be riding down the 9 flights to the bottom because it clogged up the elevator. And so I saw 3 people that day from Cannon Music Camp, unbeknownst to me.
Yeah, I forgot about that. You've been at done Cannon Music Camp at Appalachian for 50 years. That's outstanding. And Cannon's definitely one of the longer running probably music camps for students each summer throughout the country. Definitely very well known.
Yeah, we've had tens of thousands of people from foreign countries, from all over the place.
Now, Cannon it's like a 3-week. Is it 3 or 4 week?
It used to be 4. Before the economy tanked in 2008, it was a 4-week camp. In order to make it a viable thing and affordable for families, we had to cut back to 3 years. Yeah. And even then, prices have gone up so much. I don't see how a lot of people can afford it. Although the Cannon Foundation, that's not your copiers, but your sheets and towels industry, does support that. It's named for that group of business people, the towels and the sheets, rather than the copiers. We have 2 ends in the middle instead of just one. And they subsidize it by sponsoring scholarships for 95% of the kids.
Oh, wow. That's a large percentage of the kids.
Yes, but it's very costly to go there.
Yes. I remember when we were looking at prices to send my kids to Cannon, and we were like, I don't know how we can swing that. Yeah, but worth every penny if you can have those pennies to spend.
Yeah.
For sure. All right, Karen. So one thing that you have started here, or many things you started in Lee County, which are great, but one that's still well-known and long-standing is the Lee County Community Orchestra.
Yes.
When did that begin?
It actually, we're in our 36th season, getting ready to start. 36 years, so whatever the math is, late 80s. Don McLaughlin, who was head of Parks and Recreation, played very good trumpet. And he wanted an avenue to play.
Yeah, sure.
So we started at what was then just the old elementary school, which is now the Mann Center. And we put out some feelers. I was teaching a lot of kids at school. I had a Lee County Community Orchestra that was kids and grown-ups for several years, but it was through the school system. And we melded the two. And he gave us a place to play. Ryanette led us through all that, and we are still here today.
Yes, Lee County Community Orchestra has been going strong, and I've been fortunate to play with them a few seasons, and both my daughters have been able to play with them, and Sophie, my cello player, especially for the last several years all through high school, has been playing. And I've got to say, I just assumed when I first joined that it was just going to be, like nice, simple tunes the community did and got together. But when I started at a college, I played Lee County Community Orchestra. You guys, it is legit. I had never played. Most of the stuff was as difficult as I played in college, or more so. It is not shy from the difficulty of music that's out there. It is grade A music for sure. And now twice now, I talked with Michaela Pearl, who took with you, and she had such kind words for you when she at Lee County High School. And I asked her, I was like, how was the transition from high school to college violin playing at Appalachian? Did you struggle with the jump? And she said, well, no, I was in the Lee County Community Orchestra, and that prepared me just fine. She didn't find the music switch challenging at all, because she had been in the orchestra.
Yeah, and that's a lovely thing. We have had wonderful conductors who have believed in us, who have lifted the players into being able to do more than we ever thought we would be able to do.
Yeah.
And So that is a blessing, and it's tough stuff. It's not watered down stuff.
No.
I mean, we borrow stuff from major symphony orchestras, and
Yeah.
we have quite a library. We have wonderful community support here. Can't say enough about the community people who come to the concerts, who give us money so we can operate.
Yeah. Yeah, I know Sophie, she was a little concerned going into state and playing at the orchestra up there about, am I going to make it? Am I going to be able to play well enough? Is it going to be too hard? And I was like, oh, no, it is not going to be too difficult. You're in the Lee County Community Orchestra. The stuff there will be, it might even be less difficult.
Yes.
When you get up there, I was like, you're going to be just fine. You're going to be just fine just because you had that wonderful experience. So, yeah, I highly encourage any student in the Lee County Orchestra or Band program, if they really want to get better, join the Lee County Community Orchestra. It will get you there.
And our conductor does not yell at people.
No, I can tell you. I took a long break from playing when my kids were born, and I just didn't play for the longest time. And then when they got good enough on their instruments, I made them join the community orchestra, and I went back right with them. And it took a while to get the rust off, but no, they welcome everybody in there. And yeah, it will definitely make you a better player.
And we're having our first rehearsal on August 22nd, 6:30 to 9 o'clock in Lee Senior at the Band Arts Building in the Instrumental Rehearsal Hall. We would welcome you to come and try us out.
Yep, Tuesday nights, right?
Yes.
Tuesday night, 6:30 to 9 at Lee County High School in the band room. Yeah, they've been there for a long time, but definitely look them up. And they are, the music is difficult, but it's quite fun to get yourself there.
To whet your appetite, we're playing Romeo and Juliet Overture by Tchaikovsky, Finlandia by Sibelius, and a flute concerto by Renicky. And that's our first concert.
Oh, I remember Sibelius being just awful to play, like difficult.
Yes, but beautiful to listen to.
Yeah. I forget the work we were performing when COVID shut us down.
The Kalinikov.
That was it.
And
that was the hardest thing I have ever played in my life.
And when we had our meetings this summer with our conductor, he chooses the music for the next year. And he did not know who we were at that time.
Yeah.
And so we had practiced 8 rehearsals on this piece, and it was horribly difficult.
Yes, it was very
But it
difficult.
was beautiful by a Russian composer. And we were playing the whole symphony with Tara as our conductor.
That was the longest piece of music, too. When they put that on my stand, I was like, oh, my goodness, how many pages is this thing?
It's the viola part was like 24 pages long. And anyway, so Vincent was outlining the season, and he said, and in the spring, I would like to do Kalinikov Symphony number, whether it's 1 or 2, I don't remember. And I just stopped. And we have board members who are players.
Pause in the room. You're like, what do you mean?
Players and people who are non-players who support us and help us get where we need to go. I said, we were playing that until COVID shut us down. I said, I had already loaded the percussion stuff in the car, was headed to the venue site for that concert, and COVID shut us down. That Friday, we didn't even get to have the dress rehearsal or the concert.
We practiced that Tuesday.
Yep, and Tara is going to loan it to us because she owns it.
I don't know if that's a good. That was so awful. I mean, I don't remember even if it sounded good or not.
Yes, it did. It was wonderful.
It was the hardest thing I'd ever learned to play. I don't remember anything in college being this difficult.
Now, we have played several things since then that are more difficult. So, we're punting back a tiny bit, and it will be nice that we have already had a majority of the people have had 8 rehearsals on it.
Now, I found it difficult because it wasn't that the rhythms were difficult, or the notes were, out of my range or anything.
It's fast.
It was fast, but it was also the listening. I would play and I was like, do I have the right notes? I was like, I'm playing what's on the page, but I can't hear if I'm playing the right thing or not. The chordal structure, it just was more advanced. It just took forever before my ears finally said, there you go, there you go.
I'm so happy he picked that piece, because the majority of the orchestra had fallen in love with it. We didn't like it when we first got it. And, that's a thing that kids and younger players need to know. You may not like something the first time you play it. The first time my kids in high school played Pachelbel's Canon, they absolutely hated it. And I
could see that.
I thought, this is just too hard. Once you get through it and can play it, you'll like it. And they loved it, except the cello players, who only get to play 8 notes over and over and over.
You have to tell Sophie. No, I was like, oh, no, we'll play on that one. Only 8 notes. Yeah, that sounds like the orchestra piece that has like no brass except for the horns. And they play a few notes every 45 or 50 measures.
Yeah.
And you just sit and count, and hopefully you got your counting right, because it's a long time. Yeah, Lee County Orchestra is great. So how many years did you teach with Lee County Schools?
37.
37. So Michael Wilkins just had to stay a few extra years to beat you.
Yes.
To take that title away. I was wondering how long you had stayed. I wasn't sure on the longevity, because I knew Mike Wilkins, the band director at Lee County High School, and your colleague for years and years.
Yes.
And they share the same band room or music room, the rehearsal room. So they would have to fight for who goes when and what period. And
we worked together for over 25 years.
Yeah.
And it was very wonderful working with him. We are still real close friends.
Yeah. So I wondered, I was like, I knew Mike had said he would started, I think he said this was year 38 or something.
This is 39 for him.
39. Oh, so he always just rubbing it in on you,
yeah.
Having to get a little extra. All right. I'm going to ask you some, just the fun questions. What's one of your favorite pieces you've ever got a chance to play on?
I love Barbara's Adagio for strings.
Yeah.
I love anything by Tchaikovsky, so I'm real excited about Romeo and Juliet. The Russian composers are my favorite.
They are really good.
You can't go bad with Bach, Vivaldi, or any of those people.
Yeah, I always play Vivaldi for my kids at Ingram, because they're so, like the Four Seasons, they're so showy.
Yes.
And good ones to play. Let's see. All right, you answered 3 of my questions all at once. What has been the hardest piece that you've ever had to perform, either like as a soloist or in a group? What was, do you think, one of your most challenging things you've had to learn?
Well, things are more challenging now for me because I have some really bad arthritis. And getting older like I am, your mind doesn't work as fast as it used to do. So anything that is fast for me is challenging. Some of the things we've played in orchestra have just gone by so fast that no matter how often I practice, how long I practice, my fingers just do not move that fast anymore. I do not move that fast anymore. So that's been a challenge. So I would say anything fast in the last 10 years.
Yeah. All right. Karen, if you had not gone to school for music education, what do you think you would have gone to school for?
I loved history.
Yeah.
And so I might have been a history teacher. I probably always wanted to be a teacher, but probably it would have been history.
Yeah, I've always loved history too. Besides the violin, what other of the string instruments? Well, I guess viola would be the one you like to play.
I'm I play a lot of viola because not a lot of people do play a lot of viola. So I have played cello at places. I have played bass at Kennedy Center with a singing group. I mean, I've played all the string instruments. At one point, I'd love to take some guitar lessons.
Yeah.
And I said I was going to take piano and guitar. When I retired, I've been too busy to devote the time to either of those.
Now, are you playing viola in the community orchestra just because of the need for it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I played violin probably for the first 10 years of orchestra. And for the last 25, I've played viola. Just because someone had to do it.
Someone had to do it. Now, how often do you get to play violin now?
I play at church quite a bit. I play either violin or viola at lots of weddings and civic events. So I'm what we call a switch hitter.
Yes.
I have several students who are also switch hitters, and I have several colleagues who are switch hitters. So, like, if I invite people to play for a wedding, they'll say, "What instrument?" And I'll have to work out, well, who's playing violin, who's playing viola.
I love it. All right, Karen. So to end the podcast, I'm going to ask everybody the same sort of like 6 rapid fire questions. And I always find it's interesting to see how each person answers a little differently. What is one of the most beautiful things you've ever seen? And I like how this one always stumps people.
Yeah.
They think for a second.
Just interactions of family people. Different families do it different ways, but the family interactions just amaze me.
Oh, that's a great
I think they're
answer.
beautiful.
What's one of your favorite smells?
Apple pie.
Apple pie, yum. What's your favorite kind of sandwich?
I like a good chicken salad sandwich.
Nice. What is your favorite kind of drink?
Cheerwine.
Yes, you are one of my people. I'm not supposed to drink Cheerwine. I love
Me neither.
Cheerwine.
But I consume a lot of it. There's some in the refrigerator behind us.
What makes you happy every single time it happens?
When I see past students succeeding in their life, it doesn't have to be through music, just when they're doing something good. For example, that picture that you took of Sophie and I at the end of at the end of the lesson.
Yeah.
Drew a lot of comments, and I love reading all the comments of people. And there was a young man that commented on there who I haven't seen, I've thought of, but I haven't seen since he graduated. And he just commented, I love the way she made me like music.
Yes.
So I just love people when they are happy and succeed in life.
Yeah, and so my daughter had, hopefully it won't be her last lesson with Miss Huey, but she's going to NC State starting next week, and so her journey and story will be a little different as she moves onward. But I took a picture of Sophie and Karen together for the last lesson because she's been taken from Karen, I guess, for about, did we start in middle school?
Yeah.
So it's been 5 or 6 years, or maybe 7 years. That she's been taking a little break during COVID. But even in COVID, we did some virtual lessons too. We kept it going. So she's moving onward. And so we took a picture and my wife put it online. And you can tell how well loved you are and the widespread of joy you've given out. My wife was like, have you seen all the likes and comments on Miss Huey's picture? And I was like, is it a lot? And she was like, you would have thought I'm having a baby or somebody died because so many people interacted with it.
Well, I have so many different facets of my life. I have my teaching career. I have my church career. Now I have my music camp, a set of people. I've got a huge village.
Yes. And you are widely loved because every person you interact with, it's always to lift them up and give them encouragement. And everybody that I've been through has been a better student and person from being under your
thank you.
From being under your tutelage. And I really just I was trying to think of all the friends that I've had that have rolled through orchestra or your means classes, and everybody just widely loves and appreciates you.
Once you've been in one of my classes and you've been a student, you're in my family.
I remember as an adult and growing up, I was like, why didn't I take music theory with Miss Huey when I was at Lee County High School? But I wasn't have music as career minded back in those days. So I don't know why I didn't take it, because I sure took as many band classes as possible.
I don't know that it was offered when you were there.
Or maybe not. In 94, maybe they didn't do theory back in the early 90s. Maybe it wasn't a thing you could have taken, because I was all about taking as many music classes as possible. I probably would have taken orchestra if they would have allowed me to.
The first year I was here, there was a flute player with all the string players.
Yeah.
And it was challenging to find stuff that was good for her to play as well as for us to play.
Right.
And I remember the first person that played guitar said, "Can I sign up for strings?" I said, "What do you play?" And they said, "Guitar." And I'm like, "Yeah, but you may have to learn to play something else also."
Yeah.
And I said, "I'll let you play guitar some, but you'll have to play something else." And they did do that. And so that was the birth of guitars. And I was so grateful to have that opportunity to have guitar players in class.
Yeah, because and now, I mean, it's not a common instrument with orchestras, but there are quite a few orchestral pieces that feature a classical guitar or something that's with it too. What advice would you give yourself if you could give yourself advice as you were a child? What would be one little nugget of advice you might
practice more?
That's what I'm saying. Anytime I interview somebody with music, they're always practice more. Michael Wilkins said practice more. I would say I wish I would have practiced more.
And there's an art of practicing.
Yeah.
It's not just playing your instrument. There's a difference between playing your instrument and practicing. And I hope I am teaching.
You sound like my horn professor.
Teaching them how to practice instead of just play.
Yeah, you sound like my horn professor, because I didn't want to practice much either then, too. All right, and Miss Huey. So since this next question helps keep the podcast going, is there anybody you could recommend for me to talk to that is still doing the same thing as an adult that they did in their youth?
Actually, yes. I've been listening to the podcast, so I knew this question was coming. So I would like to hear more about Robert Watson. Now, Robert Watson, when I got here, was a singer in one of the chorus classes, the good chorus class, the one that did all the fancy stuff. So I know he's been singing forever.
Yeah.
But he also makes guitars.
Yes.
And
when you said his name, I was like, I don't know him, but from what I do remember him making instruments.
And he has just made a guitar, and he posted a picture of it on Facebook, and it was green, and it looked beautiful. Not because it was green. He just does quality work. So I would like to hear more about Robert Watson and his guitar making skills. And he's a member of the Tuesday Night Music Club that is played out at Depot Park on Thursday nights.
Yeah.
And he's just all about music.
All right. So if Robert Watson listens, I will be giving you a message here in a little while. All right. Karen, thanks for being on the show. It was wonderful for me to get a little history about you and your journey. So thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks for including me.
If you want to meet Karen Huey in real life, then you can join the Lee County Community Orchestra and sit right next to her and play viola on Tuesday nights. And if you can't play viola, she'll be glad to give you a few lessons, and she'll have you a virtuoso in no time. That's for sure. My daughter, Sophie, she, as a teenager, I come and get her. Sophie, it's time for your lesson. She's like, oh, I don't want to go. I'm tired. I want to be in my bed. But every time she leaves her lesson, she's like, I'm so glad I went to Miss Huey's for a lesson. I always feel so much better.
Thank you.
She always comments about how much she learns in a lesson. She goes, I can't believe how much better I get in one lesson with Miss Huey than when I came. I learn so much and I get so much better in one shot.
Well, thank you.
So she, she definitely values and appreciates you. And I know the Miller family does too. We've seen her grow just immensely working with you from middle school. She took over her 8th grade middle school class like as being like a co-teacher. Her teacher, Mr. Merricks, would say, Sophie, can you go take so-and-so? And she would do it, and she would lead the group. And then she's done the same thing in high school. Her band director say, hey, can you take these kids and work with them? And she's like, yeah, I can do that. And she took a lot of pride in teaching the bass player how to play bass. But she's like, I don't play bass. She goes, but she was showing him, and he was like, he's learning so fast.
Well, she was a sponge.
Yeah, she is a sponge. Yeah. And so we are very grateful to your time and flexibility with me and my tardiness sometimes and forgetfulness. So it's Tuesday or Thursday. We got to go to Karen's. Yes. So I'm sure she might want to get a lesson or two
That'll be
throughout
fun.
College. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes from there. But yeah, we are very much appreciative of you.
Thank you.
And she has loved taken from you. So remember, folks, join the orchestra, keep music in schools, send your kids to Miss Huey, take a string lesson. They will excel. So one clear message I've always learned from interviewing people, it's to find what makes you happy and get to it. There's a lot of life out there to live. Take the time to enjoy it. Everybody have a good week.